Welcome to PreLeg 1 press training. My name is Mr. Goodwin, and I am the Chief Advisor. I teach at Williamsville High School, and let me start by saying I look forward to working with you guys, many of you for a second, perhaps third time, and many of you for the first time. Hopefully you'll find this web training useful, and I do look forward to seeing you guys in March. Just before I move on, I want to mention that everything you'll see here on screen is available in a PDF format off the website, so if you ever want to go back and just look at some of the text minus this audio, you'll have that opportunity. Alright, moving on. The goals for PreLeg 1. PreLeg 1 is kind of like the introductory meeting of youth and government, so not a lot in terms of like the legislative process happens here. A lot of this is more just introductory. So your role as press is to cover the program, and for the pre-leges, our coverage is mainly legislative, is what we generally cover. When we get in the weekend in March, our coverage is a little bit more broad in terms of what we investigate and report on. Just remember that as a press member, you cannot campaign for anybody. So no campaign button stickers, no advocating for one candidate. You should remain unbiased. Doesn't mean you shouldn't vote for somebody when the voting actually takes place, but you shouldn't openly be in favor or against any candidate. The main thing you're going to do today is research and write your legislation story. And that means finding a piece of legislation that's going to be debated at PreLeg 1 and PreLeg 2 and writing a story about that. I'm going to kind of walk you through that process later today. Alright, so today all the youth and government groups are going through training. Every one of them, lobbyists, legislative assistants, legislators, judicial, the whole crew. And legislators will be introducing their bills in the committee and kind of just walking through, explaining what the bill is and kind of perfecting some of the language in the bills. And your job after this training is just to get that information to write that legislation story. That's the main goal. So when you leave here today, be sure you have that information with you, and I'm going to share with you what that information is. Alright. The program coordinator at your location should have a handout for you guys that have a list of all the bills that are going to be debated in your region. And if you look at the screen in front of you, you see kind of how it's laid out. It shows you the school that's presenting the bill, and then it has a brief summary of what the legislation is. You need to get a copy of this document. If you don't have one already, you should get it from your head advisor or whoever is coordinating the program at your location. So you need to pick a piece of legislation that you find interesting. Now, usually with press, I know we sometimes have a lot of people from one school, and I ask here that you try to pick something not from your own school. Well, if we have like 10 reporters just from one school, that means that your school will not get any coverage in the paper because you can't pick a piece of legislation from your own school. So what I'd like you to do is, if there's like a group of you from one school in the press, just pick one or two pieces of legislation from your home school, and then pick the rest of the legislation from other schools so we get some decent coverage. Make sure you don't pick the same piece of legislation. So I'm going to ask one of you guys can pick who it is, to kind of keep track of which student is covering which piece of legislation, making sure that you're not picking the same, covering the same piece. Okay, so first thing, pick a piece of legislation. After you pick this piece of legislation, you have to determine, where the debates are being held, okay, and how you're going to find these people who are promoting this bill. So make note of the bill number. Make note of the school that is introducing the bill. Alright, so when you go to the committees, you can find the individuals who are the ones introducing this legislation. We're going to talk about a plan after you pick the legislation, what you want to do. But make sure you pick something that you kind of enjoy and want to cover. Alright, so now you've got your legislation picked. Someone's checked off the entire list of what each person's covering. Now it's time to do the game plan. So I want you to develop a list of questions you're going to ask the sponsors in order to write your story. Right? And the questions are going to be very basic. Why'd you write it? Why is this an important issue to you and or the state? What obstacles do you see the bill encountering in the legislation process? This whole type of thing. But you want to ask these questions to the bill sponsors, the lobbyists, and the legislative assistants who are assigned to that bill. So the first task is to find those individuals and then clearly ask them these questions. I would either electronically or with paper take notes on what these people say and answer to these questions. Make sure you're accurate in what you do. But if you can't find these people, maybe the PreLeg is packed and there's a lot of individuals, you're going to find the committee room, which I'll show you where that is in a moment. But it's important that you ask every bill sponsor this list of questions. Don't just ask one. Make sure you ask them all because it's important for you guys to have these answers. First step, write down the questions you want to ask. All right, so you're going to be interviewing two groups of people. One, the bill sponsors and the lobbyist who's associated with the bill. And the second part of your story is going to be just interviewing delegates at large, anybody, and ask them what they think of this legislation. All right, those are going to be your two tasks. So now after you have your list of questions, you're going to be moving on to your committees. And that's where you're going to locate the people that you're going to be interviewing. So here's what the committees look like. You should have another piece of paper as part of your packet that shows the committee rooms. And you notice you have a red box there. It tells you which bills are being debated in which committees and where those committees are held. So you find your bill number on this handout, and then you look at what room that bill is being debated in. You look at what time that bill is being debated, and guess what? You go to that room at that time. And that group of legislators that are in that room, one of those groups is going to be your group. So that's how you find them, and then you have your list of questions, and you proceed to ask them those questions. Be sure that you are in that committee room when that bill is discussed. So keep track of your time. You don't want to miss that committee presentation. Let's see what we got here. Yes, this is just a rehash of what I just said. Make sure you know your agenda. Make sure you know your time. And you can go with a partner. You can travel in pairs if you'd like. Just make sure you know where that committee is being debated and where that bill is being debated. All right, a couple things when you get to the committee rooms. And I will say this, is that more than likely there is somebody present in the press who's been in this before who can help you, guide you to find these rooms. But if you have a question, please ask. All right, your role in committee. You can't talk in committee. Only legislators and lobbyists can participate in committee. You can write down anything they say in committee, and I definitely encourage you to do that. That's all kind of like YNG public record. So while they're talking about it, anything they say is quotable from your end. Please make sure you accurately quote. No one likes to be misquoted, and it's important for you to keep accurate notes of what people say. All right, so please be diligent in that. You can digitally record, that's fine. But if you're handwriting, please be accurate with your notes. Any person you quote in a story, any person, you need their full name, spelled correctly, their high school, and their job in the program. Those are the big three. Anybody. So if you write down something that somebody says in committee, you're going to need to find out who said it, what's their high school, and what's their job in the program. So be a good reporter and make sure you do that. You can also pull people out of committees. So if you don't want to sit there and listen to people argue about verb tense and all that type of stuff to make the bill better, you can pull out your committee, you can pull out your people who are the sponsor of your bill and talk to them in the hallway. And I think that's a good thing. That puts you kind of in charge. So if you find these people, you find the name, say, I'm looking for so-and-so, who are you? They raise their hand. Hey, can I speak to you in the hall? I'm from the press, and I got some questions about your bill. Take them in there, the hall, ask some questions that you have, document your answers accurately, and then you're kind of good to go. But you can pull them out of committee, just so you know. All right, big piece of news. After you talk to the people, all right, get all the information, they are going to have a copy of a bill brief. Looks like the piece of paper you have in front of you there. That bill brief has their bill language right there. That is a quotable document. So you can use the bill brief as a quotable text. When we talk about writing the story, which I'm going to do here in about 2 minutes, a lot of times you say, according to the bill brief, the sponsors suggest, and then you put down what's in the bill brief. So do not leave PreLeg 1 without the bill brief. The other thing the bill brief has is the names of the people with their names spelled correctly. So if you forgot the name of the co-sponsor, if you forgot the name of the lobbyist, it should be on the bill brief. So please do not leave without the bill brief. All right. After you've talked to the sponsors and heard the debate, okay, you got all that stuff taken care of. Now you want to get some quotes from people in the program and see what they thought of that bill. So let's say you have a bill that is legalizing prostitution. Very popular bill throughout the 20 years I've been in youth and government. It always comes up. So you can go around and say, all right, Bill group from Lake Park wants to legalize prostitution. Do you have anything to say on this issue? And then you write down their comments, what they say. Be sure to get their name, their high school, and their job. And you go around and just get a bunch of quotations from students, delegates, about their opinions of the bill. And that's going to kind of wrap up your story in the end. Here's what the delegates think. Try to get 15 statements. Talk to a bunch of people. Make sure you talk to a good cross-section. Don't just go to people from your school. Don't just go to seniors. Males, females, different ethnicities, different jobs in the program. Get a good cross-section. Alright, so when you're ready to write, here's what you need. This is what you have to have. You have to have a copy of the bill brief. You have to have a copy of the statements from the bill sponsors and the lobbyists, if there was one assigned to the bill. Be sure you ask, personally talk to those people. You should have statements from other delegates about the legislation. Get their opinions, get what they think, get about 15 quotations. Once you have those 3 things done, all right, you're pretty much good to go. Your work is done, as we say. Now you're ready to write the story. The next slideshow is my little spiel about how do you write this story. So if you're ready to move on, so am I.